Just finished installing my new Renogy 60 amp DC to DC battery charger. It's still a little bit of mess I gotta clean up. It's mounted on a back wall. The underneath here is where the batteries are, and there's a solar charge controller, power inverter, power converter for charging a shore power, fuse box. There's no room for this to go underneath, and it gets more ventilation up here. It's being powered by a Powermaster 165 amp alternator that is rated to produce 100 amps at idle, between 600 and 800 RPM. More than enough power to feed this thing, which is very important. You got to make sure the alternator can handle it, because this is 60 amps, but it can pull 75 amps, 80 amps from the alternator. Let's see. You see here, it's got a yellow DC plus wire. That's on the switch. That's turns it off and on. So when the engine's off, it doesn't kill your starting battery. But since I don't trust that, I have a Stinger 200 amp isolator up under the dash on a firewall, hooked to the same switch as that yellow wire, so that when I turn it off, it's off. And it's set so that when I crank the starter, it disengages the isolator, so I'm not pulling from here to start the engine. One thing that's pretty important on these, because there's a lot of reviews where these things get very, very hot, like in the 150 degree range or more. They're rated to go up to 122 degrees. But one of the main things that causes heat is not having enough ventilation around it, and using the wrong wire, wrong connectors. Like this fits up to a 4 gauge in thickness. And these aren't the terminals that you would stick the wire in there and crank the screw down to hold them in place. These require a ring terminal. So I have a copper 5/16 terminal on each one. I have the heat shrink tubing, so because they're kind of close together. This is 100% pure copper battery cable. It costs more money for this, but with this good cable, being 4 gauge and having good tight terminals, good connection, there's a lot less resistance, so less heat. If this has bad resistance, the heat's going to travel, and it's going to heat up the inside of this and burn it up. There's a 100 amp fuse. I know it looks like it's out in the open, but it's got a plastic cover on it with tape, just in case the plastic doesn't stay snapped in. The tape will hold it. I've had experience where these A&L fuse holders, the plastic cover can fall off. It's not mounted because it's easier to change the fuse if it's not mounted to anything. And that is on the output. And then on the input, under the hood, is another one of those, 100 amps. You don't really need 100 amp for the output, but it came with a 2-pack, so that's what I used. You do want a 100 amp, because you want to be over what this thing is going to draw. Because if you put like a 90 amp fuse in there, this thing decides to pull like 91 amps or something like that, it could pop the fuse. It does have internal fuses. I think there's 3 fuses inside of here. So if it ever stops working, you could check those. I haven't had any trouble with heat yet. I had it running for a little bit. I got to run it longer. But I had it running for a little bit, and it stayed cool the whole time. And like I mentioned earlier, it could be because I'm using pure copper and battery cable and 4 gauge. This is rated as welding cable, so the insulation can handle a lot of heat. So 60 amps is nothing for this. If you buy that cheap stuff on Amazon, the what do they call that, copper clad aluminum, you use cheap terminals, you're going to create resistance. The wire's not going to carry the current as well. You're going to create resistance, and this thing is going to get hot. So keep that in mind when you want to purchase one of these for your RV. And I have 3 300 amp hour batteries in parallel. They're lithium or LiPo4. And it is rated to handle 3 of them in parallel. I don't know what else. I think that's it. Make sure to gauge, like I said, use the highest gauge you can, 4 gauge. And my alternator has, going from the alternator to the battery, is 2-watt cable, 00. It's big. Going from the alternator to the starting battery, and from the alternator to the starter, I went way overkill. Same with the ground cables. To 00 going from the battery to the body, and from the battery to the engine. So it's got more than enough good wire, and that's pure copper. All right, but that's it. That's my new Renogy 60 amp battery charger. Let's see how well it's going to hold up. If anything does go south with it, I'll make an updated video. All right, thanks for watching.